I'm Dave Baker.
And I'm Spandrew Spice.
Welcome to Deep Cuts, the podcast where we pick a topic and walk you through the ins, the outs, and the nitty-gritty, so you can appear like an interesting and idiosyncratic person at your next forced social function. Today's topic is...
the Roswell UFO incident.
What was the Roswell UFO incident? Well, it's without a doubt the UFO sighting that has attracted the most mainstream attention in U.S. history. Transpiring in 1947, this crash landing of a supposed alien vessel has caused generations of people to habitually research and analyze everything about the strange goings-on in the New Mexico desert. In the shadow of a UFO-themed McDonald's, America is a land of infinite possibilities, and with those possibilities comes infinite fears and infinite hope. Perhaps nowhere on Earth is the question, are we alone in the universe, more potent than in the land of the free and the home of individuals with too much time on their hands. And yet, dismissive statements like that make it seem like only the cultural outliers and subcultural freaks are those of us who have the claim to have interacted with what we've collectively come to know as extraterrestrials. For a brief window of time in the summer of 1947, the idea of aliens took the country by storm. Why? Because people saw unidentified flying objects in the sky on July 2nd of 1947, and it provoked a cultural response and a fever pitch that has never quite been matched in the decades since. While the event known today as the Roswell incident was far from the first sighting or news story to involve what we now refer to today as quote-unquote the Greys, it is the most prominent. Stoked by rising Cold War tensions, the Roswell incident poured lighter fluid on the smoldering embers of our collective fear that perhaps we are not alone. Spandrew, this topic today, it's a special one.
Me old alma mater.
I think this is hometown hero special is what we in the biz call it.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I was known far and wide from border to border of Roswell, New Mexico as the champion of the people, keeper of UFO knowledge.
You're originally for the listener. You're originally from where, Spandrew?
Yeah, I'm from Roswell, New Mexico, and it's interesting because I think that a couple of things about that. So the first thing is it's really interesting. I'm assuming that my perspective on these stories is just wildly different than a lot of people's because I know about these stories first and foremost as local lore or like the thing that everything is themed after. I don't know how to describe it. It's not. I wouldn't say it's like it's just like a thing where it's like you take it. It was taken for granted for me for many years, and I was still interested in alien stuff. I still liked alien. We've talked about this before, but I still liked paranormal stuff, and I watched the X-Files and all that stuff. But all of this stuff was first and foremost just kind of like the background radiation of my life. Like you know what I'm saying? Like it's not often that like you have a casual conversation about the in-depth lore of the Greys with like your grandma or something. But that is very common because it's just a thing. It's just when you're in Roswell, it's just a thing. Aliens, you know about it. It's all everybody knows about it. There's fucking restaurants where the lore is written on the walls.
What is the percentage in Roswell, like when you would go into just like a normal convenience store or like a Rite Aid or random business, what is the percentage of the decor alien themed? Like, is it, I know, cause like from an outsider's perspective, there's like the stereotypes of there's the UFO McDonald's, there's a local museum and like, I don't know, I'm sure there's like a city sign or something, but like when you're just like running around Roswell, what percentage of it is like aimed at touristy trap stuff?
Well, I mean, that's tempered by the fact that Roswell is very small. So, there's a main street area and that's where like the UFO museum is and, a bunch of shops and things like that. Just like the sort of like the local marketplace scene of Roswell. And then like, at least whenever I was a kid, it's different now. But whenever I was a kid, It was that, and then there was just like, if you drove out to the outskirts of town, there was the mall. And the mall was, you know, Walmart and Target and the movie theater and all the big box chains and things like that. That was out kind of at the edge of Roswell. But everything in town on this main street strip was all the local business scene. And then there was like random little strip malls here and there that were like, you know, whatever, Walgreens or whatever. But the main body of Roswell was just this strip of a bunch of local businesses. And so that being said, I would say that like in that area, like 100% is the percentage.
Really? Every place you go into,
every shop is somehow incorporating aliens, whether it be ranging from, like I said, the local shops where they at least have an alien painted on a window somewhere at the bare minimum, if not like a cutout of an alien holding up the sign for the shop, or like just like inside like several like alien themed like racks or whatever. Like at bare minimum, there's like an alien painted on the window that's like, take us to your shopper or some bullshit like that. Bigger chains were in on it as well, like McDonald's. The McDonald's in Roswell, as you referenced, is a giant UFO. It's the building is a giant UFO. We've talked about this before on the show as well, but the Arby's used to have a sign that was like the Arby's hat with a UFO crashed into the side of it. They've changed it since then, and now it's just like the Arby's sign with like a little UFO thing hanging off of it or something like that. But it used to be a UFO crashed into the hat.
Yeah, go listen to our History of Arby's episode. We found that out in real time on the episode.
They changed it to be less cool. But yeah, so like pretty much in that area, like every single business is at least somewhat UFO themed, even like restaurants. I remember there's like the Mexican restaurant, like the main big one in Roswell. That's called El Toro Bravo. And even that, which just has nothing to do with aliens. It's a Mexican food restaurant, and even it has aliens incorporated into it. Once you incorporate the entire town, including like the suburbs and like maybe some of the few shops that are like out there in those areas, and then like random strip malls that have like little stores, like, you know, outlet stores or whatever, then it, you know, there as my memory serves, there wasn't much alien theming with those. I don't think that they really bothered with that. But if you really just take in the town itself, it's 100% alien themed stuff.
What is the temperature of the... Because the thing, I mean, we're going to get into a lot of the details about the actual case, and we're going to talk about that. But I'm also just curious about your experience living there, because if I were not me, if I were someone maybe of a little less quirky background and I grew up around reindeer, I would fucking hate reindeer if I saw them bitches every day. Like, are the people of Roswell, in your broad stereotype of perception, is the vibe like, this is something we're all doing because we fucking have to because of the tourist money? Or is the vibe like, no, I'm going to go see a man named Mulder in the back of a Walmart parking lot? Like, what?
I think it's like, it's a combination of like true believers, like a couple of people that, especially the people that run like the museum and then like some of the other like oddity shops and things like that, like true believers, or at least people, even not true believers, just people that are just really into the lore. Like they love it. It's like it's a cool thing to them and they want to like be involved in it. And then people who are just like, yeah, if we can make money if we have a little shop that sells like alien t-shirts or whatever. It's just like a cynical tourist cash grab. And I now, to be fair, I might not have picked up on this through my childlike lens. I moved out of Roswell whenever I was in high school. But I never got the sense that it was like a thing that people hated or were annoyed by, or like the stereotypes that you might imagine of a town that has like a thing where everybody's like, oh, I just fucking hate the alien shit, all these tourists. I never got the sense that that was like an overwhelming thing, an overwhelming attitude. It seemed like at worst, people just were kind of ambivalent to it. It was just a thing that existed. And for the most part, a lot of people just kind of ignored it, you know?
Okay. Understood. Interesting. The specifics of the case we are discussing today all transpire within the boundaries of New Mexico. Several eyewitnesses claimed to see a disc-shaped object moving swiftly in a northwesterly direction through the desert sky on July 2nd, 1947. No one knew for sure what it was. The following morning, Mac Brazel, a foreman of a nearby ranch located in Corona, New Mexico, rode out to herd sheep from one field to another, like he had done countless times before. Accompanying the man was a young neighbor boy, Timothy D. Proctor. As they made their way through the arid plains, they made small talk and attempted to keep the sheep all moving in the same direction. It was no different than a million other hot July days in the high desert, and yet it would be. They quickly came upon strange debris, various chunks of metal, scattered from one hilltop down an arroyo and up another hill and running down its other side. Brazen initially thought that this was some sort of aircraft that had crash-landed. Brazen had even heard something that sounded like an explosion the night before, in fact. However, he hadn't thought anything of it because there had been a thunderstorm and he had written the sound off as lightning strikes and thunderclaps. Brazen and Proctor dismounted their horses and started collecting the metal shards. Surprisingly, it was extremely light to the touch, while still being very durable. What could these chunks of metal be? Perhaps they were not of this world. On July 8th, after the story of the crash had taken on something of a life of its own, RAAF Public Information Officer Walter Haut issued a press release stating that the military had recovered a flying disc near Roswell. Do you want to read this Roswell Daily Record from 1947 newspaper article?
I'll try. It's pretty small. So yeah, the only thing I could find of it was this front page scan, which doesn't even show the whole little blurb. So it's cut off, but it says it's a front page story, and it says no details of flying disc are revealed. Roswell hardware man and wife report disc seen. The intelligence office of the 509th Bombardment Group at Roswell Army Airfield announced at noon today that the field has come into possession of a flying saucer. According to information released by the department over authority of Major J.A. Marcel, intelligence officer, the disc was recovered on a ranch in the Roswell vicinity after an unidentified rancher had notified Sheriff Geo Wilcox here. And it's I'm assuming it's referring to a picture of him, but we can't.
The picture, yeah, I think so.
That he had found the instrument on his premises. Major Marcel and a detail from his department went to the ranch and recovered the disc. It was stated. After the intelligence officer here had inspected the instrument, it was flown to higher headquarters, quote unquote. The intelligence office stated that no details of the saucer's construction or its appearance had been revealed. Mr. and Mrs. Dan Wilmot apparently were the only persons in Roswell who had seen what they thought was a flying disc. That's about all we can see from the old rag Roswell Daily Record, which, you know, to a lot of people that just sounds like a cool little thing from a paranormal story, but that was just what our newspaper was called.
Do you have memories of like seeing that newspaper around?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, totally. And yeah, it's talking about the Air Force Base here, and also just another thing. There's an Air Force Base in Roswell, and it's basically whenever I was a kid, it was mostly like not in use, basically just a ghost town. And there was, I guess, some like offices out there where they still did things, but it was mostly just an abandoned airfield or an Air Force Base. And you would like drive through it to get to certain places sometimes. And actually, I got into a car accident on the Roswell Air Force Base one time because my dad picked me up when we were driving out to his house, and he lived out in the middle of nowhere, and you had to drive through the Air Force Base to get there. And because it's just a ghost town, I guess he was just like fucking speeding through it like he was the only person there. And a dude pulled out of a little parking lot and we slammed into him.
Man, that's crazy.
It might have been an alien. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. After station director George Walsh broke the news over the Roswell radio station KSWS and relayed it to the Associated Press, his phone lines were overwhelmed. He later recalled, "All afternoon, I tried to call Sheriff Wilcox for more information, but could never get through to him. Media people called me from all over the world." The Associated Press ran an article on July 9th, which read, "The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force, Roswell Army Airfield, was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers and the Sheriff's Office of Chavez County.
The flying object landed on a ranch near Roswell sometime last week. Not having phone facilities, the ranchers stored the disc until such time as he was able to contact the sheriff's office, who in turn notified Major Jesse A. Marcel of the 509th Bomb Intelligence Group. Really quick, before we get into the timeline of events, and really like dig into like the sequence of the crash and the discovery and all that stuff, I mirror back your question. What was your sort of like initial experience with? We've heard the firsthand account of somebody who grew up in the town, and it was just like a thing that was a part of like the culture of like, and you know, one thing I didn't mention, which is also I would find funny if I heard it from somebody if I didn't grow up in Roswell. So and I'm cutting off my own question that I'm asking you, but it just popped into my head. But whenever everyone talks about the UFO museum, we've talked about it before. It's a thing that a lot of people come to Roswell to go to see. But the funny thing is that it's like there's like a snack bar in it, and so it's like a hangout spot. Like I would go and hang out at the UFO museum with my friends.
Like fucking like the bar in Buffy.
Yeah. It's like that's literally what I was gonna say. Is like it's almost like the bar in Buffy or like the Peach Pit in 90210. It was like a TV hangout spot for kids because it was just the UFO museum and it just had that vibe. But also there was like a snack bar in there, and you would just go in there and like drink soda and like eat potato chips and stuff. Which is just funny. I think it's funny that it's like part of this lore and all these people that have like all of this emotional investment in this idea of aliens and this story and the crash and whether or not it was real and whether or not there were aliens or not. And for us, it was just like, that was like going to like hang out at McDonald's or something like that.
The teens, man, the teens are the ones that are keeping the conspiracy theories alive.
Yeah, and you know, they have like, you know, I mean, definitely we should go there sometime. We got to take a trip, and we got to go to the UFO museum. I will say that like in a way, it's kind of underwhelming. Like it's a little bit it's a little small, and it's like I can imagine if you flew to here from Germany that you might be like, what the fuck? Like it's a little underwhelming, but in ways that are appealing to me, and I'm assuming you, it's very cool. And we've talked about it before, like the fucking shitty little like displays that are like made of cardboard and paper mache and stuff, which is like really, really cheesy and really awesome. And also they have like, I always thought it was like a real prop, but I don't actually know if that's true or not. But there's a little display, there's this little window, and then there's like these dummies, these wearing like doctor masks and robes. And then they have like a gray alien on an operating table. And I think that the alien is the prop from the movie Roswell that was made about the Roswell crash with Kyle MacLachlan. I think that's what it is, but actually I don't 100% know. It might just be a recreation, but it is the alien from that movie, the gray alien from that movie. But anyway, what was your first introduction to the Roswell crash and aliens in general, gray aliens? And what was your thought about Roswell before talking to a real life?
A Roswellian? Roswellite? What are you guys called? Roswellian. Wow.
I mean, as much as that's used, I don't think anyone uses that term really, but I've definitely heard people say Roswellian in almost kind of like a joking way.
Yeah, I mean, this is not going to come as a shock. I was obsessed with aliens as a younger person and still kind of am. At my local library, there was a documentary that was produced and was hosted by Jonathan Frakes from Star Trek The Next Generation, all about the history of alien sightings, UFO crashes. Roswell was a big component of that. And that was the first time I think I ever heard about Roswell. And then I checked a book out from the local library about Roswell, and I got obsessed with it. I was so convinced for so long. And, you know, we did an episode about Bob Lazar, and for a long time, I was similarly obsessed with him. And that, you know, around that same time, it was like you discover what Bigfoot is, Nessie, Bob Lazar. Maybe you watch Loose Change on the internet and you're like, yeah, you know, we have fucking gas, jet fuel doesn't melt skyscrapers or whatever the fuck the chant is from that thing.
The best value conspiracy theory. Jet fuel doesn't melt skyscrapers.
Yeah. And so, I was very interested in all of that stuff. And as we've talked about before, this was at a time when conspiracy theories were fun, not a dangerous pipeline to alt-right ideologies, typically. The idea that aliens had crashed and maybe their ships and or bodies had been recovered by the government and taken elsewhere and housed potentially at Area 51, and the government had covered it up, was so enthralling to me as a younger person, and it's still enthralling to me. And I'm so sad that that Area 51 isn't really a thing anymore. Groom Lake is such a strange, compelling piece of this side of the internet. And the world is just a little dimmer that the U.S. government's like, nah.
Actually, that's one of the biggest misconceptions about Roswell is a lot of people are just aware. Oh, well, actually, and I'll say another thing, too, that I forgot to say earlier to kind of tag onto this. But a big misconception that a lot of people have, they know about Roswell. They know about the fact that it's something to do with aliens. But a lot of people think that Area 51 is in Roswell. Yeah, that's the thing is people think that Area 51 is in Roswell. And I've explained to many people that Area 51 is in Nevada and the supposed crash site of the aliens that they took to Area 51 eventually was this farm in Roswell. But a lot of people think that the Area 51 is in Roswell. And yeah, that what I was going to say earlier is when I moved to California, like I said, I moved here in I moved to California in high school. And, this it's kind of indicative of a lot of things, I think. Lack of education comes to mind, but, whenever I would talk to anybody, and either I would say, or it would just be known about me that I was from Roswell, New Mexico, there was inevitably 100% of the time, one of two things that they would say to me. They would either say, "Oh, are you an alien?" Or they would say, "You don't look Mexican."
What?
Because
the name of the state is New Mexico? Oh my God. And
I just remember thinking, it's even crazier to me now. Now I'm like, what the fuck? But even as a kid, it wasn't as crazy to me. But even as a kid, I was like, it's 2 states over. I could at least understand somebody from California not knowing what Maryland is or something on the other side of the country, but it's 2 states over.
What does that even mean? They don't know what you think that somebody in California doesn't know what Maryland is?
Like a kid, yeah, maybe. I'm just saying maybe. I could understand it, I guess. But they didn't know what New Mexico was, to the point where they thought, their mind thought they heard that I was from Mexico. And this one kid, he was like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I was like, "New Mexico." And he's like, "Oh yeah, my family went to Cancun last year. It was really cool." What? It's 2 states over.
Wow, that's really intense. But yeah, I've always been interested in UFO stuff, and I've always specifically been interested in Roswell. So when I found out initially that you were from Roswell, I got very excited. I don't know how well I hit it or not, but yeah, because I love anything that's weirdly associated with UFOs, I'm just so fascinated by it. I don't even necessarily know I'm not a true believer. We've had this conversation so many goddamn times on the show of it's not that I want to believe, it's that I'm maybe, I don't know.
I want to believe, but that sounds like some bullshit.
Yeah, I want to believe, but that sounds like some bullshit is definitely a pithy way of summarizing my latent skeptic and also true believer mindset. But I love so much of the weird bullshit and weird interviews. I once at a alien convention bought a VHS tape of an interview with, I think it was George Proctor. Was that his name? George Proctor? The little kid, Tim Proctor. And it was just him at a kitchen table being recorded on a fucking VHS. It was nothing. And he didn't say anything really. He was just kind of then we fucking found some shit in the desert. It's fucking weird. But that's what this world was before the internet, where you were just so hungry for any weird little piece of.
Yeah. And it even bled a little bit into the internet age, before the web 2.0, which is social media, back whenever it was just downloading shit on Kazaa or whatever. Like I definitely remember just downloading weird documentaries that I don't even know where the fuck they came from, like about aliens. Did you ever read the did you ever read or watch the Roswell series of books or their accompanying TV show?
I watched the TV show. I had one of the books, but I never read it. I wanted to like that show more than I actually did.
Yeah, I mean it's like a CW style teenage soap opera.
But that should be great. That's right. I mean, I love YA stuff. Like that's not the reason why I didn't like it. It was just not enough of that. Like I wanted a little bit more alien, a little bit more soapy, a little bit more 90s, or 2000s, whenever it was. I want everything about Roswell when it was airing. I was like, it's almost there. It's Smallville, but with aliens, and it's almost there.
Yeah, I actually don't have many memories. I watched the show, but I actually don't have many memories of it, so I don't even know. I must have not left a great impression on me. But but the funny thing is, you were asking earlier about like, when you're from there, like, do you just like fucking hate this bullshit or whatever? And like, while I didn't get that vibe from a lot of people. I got more like ambivalence than anything. It's funny because like me, at least as a kid, I was loving every second of it. Like it was the opposite. I was from there, and I was like, I fucking love this. I love that I'm from here. I was into the alien shit. I liked to go to the museum. I liked to look at the stuff. And I read the fucking Roswell books. Like I read every single one of them. Like I'm just in Roswell reading these Roswell books. Like I was a stan.
Was this stuff local? Like was it locally accurate? Like what did the author go there?
No, absolutely not. The version of Roswell inside the books is just like it's like a different dimension.
That's unfortunate. It would have been really cool if the author like spent some time there and it was like, yeah, when you turn on left 55th Street, you fucking find aliens. No,
the version of Roswell in the books and especially the show, it might as well have been like LA. Like it was not accurate to what the actual town was like at all.
Let's watch some of this little video here about. This is from the documentary video Roswell Cover-Up 75 Years Later.
The sequence of events, as I've been able to establish them in my mind, is you've got radar sightings taking place early in July, 1st, 2nd, 3rd of July. You've got people watching this thing with great interest. I mean, here we are over the site where the atomic bomb was detonated in 1945. Atomic research still continues, the 509th Bomb Group, and rockets being launched from Alamogordo. So it's an area of high interest, especially to a space traveling race. Friday, July 4th. The object disappears from the scopes. There's reason to suspect it's down. The next morning, we've got an archaeology team out there. We also have a man and a woman. This story now begins like every science fiction movie you've ever seen. I've got a couple out in the desert. She's married, he's not. They're not supposed to be there. The thing roars overhead and slams into the ground. They look at it the night before, but they're so drunk, they don't do anything about it. The next morning, they sneak back to see what's going on. About the time the archaeology team shows up, the archaeologists send someone back to call the sheriff. Sheriff alerts the 509th Bomb Group. We've got trucks coming in on the morning of July 5th, a military cordon going up around the area here close to Roswell. And this is what's critical. Why do you put up guards on the roads right off Highway 285 just north of town if all you've got is the debris field some 75 miles northwest? You don't need to do that. If the craft impacts much closer to Roswell, then the guards make perfect sense. You want to keep people out of the area. The team picks up the bodies at that location. They're brought back to Hangar 84. The debris is brought back to this area. It's transported out on the night of July 5th. The next day, they're sitting around congratulating themselves. Aren't we bright? We got this thing contained. Nobody knows what's happened. Mac Brazel shows up at the sheriff's office with a box full of the debris. Clearly, this is something else.
So basically, these rumors start to swirl about, was there a ship there? Was it just debris? What's going on? Everybody's kind of getting mixed signals. Multiple different sets of eyewitnesses have different stories. And these rumors start circulating in town that the military is in possession of a crashed ship and 2 extraterrestrial bodies. Now, there's a press release that goes out with posed photos of multiple members of the Air Force posing with, quote unquote, the debris. Let's talk about these for a second. So the first photo we have here, it was shot in Fort Worth Army Airfield, and we have Major Jesse A. Marcel posing with a bunch of stuff here on July 8th. What do you think about this photo, Spandrew?
Yeah, it's funny because I mean, if you've seen the movie, or actually I think it's more of a mini series, Roswell. If you've seen this movie, or I think it's a mini series called Roswell that has stars Kyle MacLachlan, and it's about the Roswell crash and the cover up and all that stuff. This material is described in the lore of the Roswell UFO crash as like this thin tinfoil-like material that can't wrinkle, and if you like cut it or score it with a knife, it'll immediately just go back to, you know, being smooth, and if you crinkle it up with your hand, it'll immediately just unroll itself and go back to smooth, and you just like can't wrinkle it or anything like that. And when they show it in the movie or miniseries or whatever, they sort of show it that way. It's like this tinfoil stuff, but then when you like stick a knife in it, it just magically reforms. The stuff in this picture is just like space blanket material.
Yeah, it's just purely just space blanket.
Yeah, it's not that at all. It's super wrinkly, and it just looks like normal ass whatever that material is. I don't know what that's called, but it's the stuff that space blankets are made out of, which makes sense that there would be like a flying thing in the air that would be covered in that space blanket material to protect it from like the cold of being in the sky or whatever, the moisture of the clouds. Like it makes perfect sense that it would have that on there.
So the second photo we have here is Brigadier General Roger Ramey and Colonel Thomas J. Dubois. And they're both kneeling in what appears to be someone's living room and looking at more space blanket. And I don't buy for a second that this is what anyone in their right mind would mistake as a flying saucer or a part of a flying saucer or even a fucking weather balloon, which is the cover story that they used. Like, I don't buy for a second that this is what anyone found out in the desert.
Yeah, it just looks like a kite made of space blanket.
Let's watch this eyewitness testimony video here.
It was aluminum in appearance. There were fragments of aircraft skin or whatever the thing was, and also some girders with pictures of hieroglyphic-like things on it. I took them to be owls, but who knows. Anyhow, it was interesting. I did get to handle the material, and the material had some peculiar properties. For instance, it looked like Hershey bar wrappings, but you squeeze it up in your hand as hard as you could, let go, and it returned originally to the original shape instantly. Then the next day, Jesse brought some of the stuff into the intelligence office. And so we looked at it and played with it a while, and then everybody went back to work. Later that day, boom, nobody knows anything, you just shut up, nothing happened, etc. And when you're in the service, you do what they say to do. Major Marcel was called up to Fort Worth to show the press what he found. Well, what he had to show the press was really a weather balloon. This stuff was not a weather balloon, what he brought back. So he was forced to lie to the press, we say. I don't think he was too happy about it, but you do what you're told again. You're in the service. You followed orders. And they were afraid of the American public panicking with this knowledge. I don't think that would have happened, but the word came down from up above, and you do what it says.
My name is Carlene Green, and I live here in Roswell.
Aunt Carlene?
My father was in the Air Force, and he was stationed here at Roswell at the time in 47. He was assigned as part of the cleanup crew out at the site. He had the highest security clearance that the Air Force gives, but he was never able, nor did he ever attempt to discuss the incident. He passed away in 1988. He had his last tour of duty was in Vietnam, where he acquired Agent Orange. Ended up with cancer of the spine. He did not want to die at home. He wanted to die in a military hospital. And as he was laying on the gurney waiting to be loaded into the ambulance, he told me, he said, "Baby," he said, "the story is true." He said, "Don't let anybody try to tell you any different." He said, "The incident happened. There was a spacecraft." He said, "There were graves out there." And I kissed him, and that's the last I got to talk to my dad. But he was very committed gentleman. His love was for the service and his family, and he did his best to take care of both. But what he told me, I believe with all my heart. There is no doubt in my mind.
My name is Larry Roulette. I'm the son of Carl Roulette, who was a sergeant in the Air Force. And my dad and I's relationship was, I can't say it was an excellent relationship, but it was a good relationship. We never had any big problems or anything.
That's a strange distinction to make for your relationship with your father.
We were out in his shop, and we kind of got into a conversation about it then. And that's when he let me know that he had been on the cleanup crew that went out to pick up the crash site in 1947. So we kind of got into it. You know, he didn't want to really, you had to pry things out of him, and it was hard to do, but he was sick back then too, I believe. So I don't know. But he told me about the graves. Said they got out there and then turned around, and all of a sudden there was 3 of them laying there. You know. So they bundled them up and took them back to the dispensary on the base. After they got out here and they found out they were in over their heads out here, they flew them to Dallas-Fort Worth. And then from there, they went to the Little Pentagon, which is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. He told me to be best if I didn't tell anybody. And then he said, you know, that the government had told them, when this incident happened, that the government had come to them or gathered them all up, the ones that was out there, and told them that they were not to say anything about this. And they threatened them with their pensions, threatened them with their lives, threatened them with their families' lives. Word came out that they told them that it was a big desert out there and you could be put in places you'd never be found if you talked about it.
So what do you think, Spandrew? You buy these eyewitness accounts? What do you think?
There's a lot to unpack there. First of all, you know, me and my dad, we had I'd call it a good relationship. I wouldn't say a great relationship. I mean, we weren't like borrowing each other's clothes or anything like that. Like, you know, he probably came to like half of my school plays. Like, by no means was it like the greatest relationship. It wasn't like magnificent. Like, he didn't like take me out, you know, into the wilderness and like teach me how to survive or anything like that on a harrowing night of you know, life or death, where he left me for dead, but in the end it was to teach me to be a better man. But like, it was good though. It was like a good relationship. Also, and this is a complete aside, but all those people, they're just like quintessential New Mexico people. Just like that sort of like that slight West Texas drawl, very stoic, humorless, the lack of life behind their eyes of a person who's just like lived in the desert for their whole lives. None of the charm of somebody from Texas. They're just that's a person from New Mexico, like completely. But also in regard to the actual whether I believe it or not, I was gonna ask on that note. Because I mean, I mean, number one, like that we saw those photos, like that's not magical space material. Like it's just some fucking tinfoil or whatever the fuck, space blanket shit. I have some of that right here in this garage that I can whip out right now if I wanted. So I don't believe it. I don't believe that this specific thing, these claims are true. What I was gonna ask you is. So you have a couple things going on here. You have this old man who was like an eyewitness, and he's saying, "I fucking saw it. It was alien shit. It's all real." And he's an old man. He's in his 80s at this time. He doesn't. I'm not saying that I believe him, but I'm also saying like I don't know what many motivations he has for lying about this. And then you have these younger people who are relaying information about their dad and saying like, oh, my dad told me this was true. My dad on his deathbed told me this was true. And then in the same regard, like you have these old men who apparently on their deathbed said these things were true, which once again, they don't have much incentive to lie about these things. And then if you move that further down the funnel and you go to the kids and you say, oh, maybe they're lying about it. And then once again, it's like, what incentives do they have to lie about this? So what I was going to ask is like, what do you think, given the fact that I don't think that this crash was aliens and that these claims that they found the gray bodies or any of this stuff is true, what motivates somebody to, as like an 85-year-old man who has no real inherent incentive to do so, to like double down on this claim?
Well, I think you could go one of two ways. So if you believe that the story is true objectively and that they are attempting to correct the record, that makes sense. Where if you're an individual who's like, look, man, I'm on the way out, but we all need to know that these fucking grays exist. Okay, I can understand that. Conversely, if it's not a true story and you're on the way out and you're like, I'm not satisfied with my life and I'm trying to build a legacy for myself and cement a narrative that I'm part of something bigger, you say, look, man, those aliens are fucking real. And you hope that somehow that in death you become, this kind of like mouthpiece for this conspiratorial thought or alternative perspective on history that allows your name to live on past your time on the mortal coil, right? And I think, frankly, either of those is understandable.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't really believe it, but I also don't rule out that it could be true, but it just doesn't seem, based on everything that I've ever learned or read about this, it seems to me like it was a pretty straightforward example of some kind of government testing that they wanted to cover up.
But here's the thing in everything in what you just said, right? The narrative publicly is aliens crashed, government does a cover up saying that it's weather balloons, right? Many years later, we ended up finding out, they say it's weather balloons. The public rejects that to a certain degree and says, that's bullshit. They're not weather balloons. That's bullshit. You're hiding it. There's aliens there. So that's kind of the story in a 3-sentence thing. And the government's like, no, we didn't do a cover up, man. It was weather balloons. We didn't do a cover up. We just did these weather balloons. Many years later, we ended up finding out that Project Mogul was a series of top secret tests that the US government was using large scale weather balloons and sinking them up in Earth's low orbit to protect us from nuclear attacks from the Russians. So saying they're weather balloons isn't really true. They're more than just like a fucking weather balloon.
It's like, okay, guys, okay, fine. We admit it. They weren't weather balloons. They were fucking badass weather balloons. Ah!
But so I wish that the listener could just see what you just did. That was amazing. But like, so here's the thing, right? The government's like, no, we didn't do a cover up. Many years later, they're like, we did do a cover up. We've been lying to you, but not about aliens. And I don't know, man. It's really difficult to accept that they would be like, yeah, we definitely aren't lying to you for like 40 years. And then finally come forward and be like, we definitely did lie to you, but just about this little thing. It's just like a little lie. It's just like a tiny lie. And then it's like, I don't know, man. You're admitting to me that you've lied to the American public for 50 fucking years. And I don't know that it's aliens. I just know that you motherfuckers are lying. So what else are you lying about?
Oh yeah, 100%. I place no stock in the story of what the U.S. government has said. We've been through this. We know that Project MK Ultra was a real thing that if the government had any choice, we would never have known about. Which is, I mean, in a lot of ways, crazier and more fucked up than if there was aliens. Because it's just like, okay, there's aliens. That's fucking crazy. But MK Ultra was like, we were experimenting on humans and like enslaving them and trying to turn them into super soldiers. Like, that's fucking nuts. And the only reason why we don't know, or the only reason why we know about it, is because they like accidentally filed some paperwork wrong. Like, we were never supposed to know that. That was like a thing that if they had just done that right, there would be no knowledge of it whatsoever. So yeah, I place no stock in them being like, oh, well, we lied, but like, it was only a lie where it was like this and it's actually this. Like, that means nothing to me. I don't, we talked about this on the Crop Circle episode, but my general thought about not the existence of aliens, but whether or not we have sighted and interacted with aliens, is that in order for it to be true that aliens are real and they have been to Earth, they would have to have a level of ability to conceal themselves that is beyond our understanding. In order for them to come to this planet and not be seen ever, they would have to have an ability to hide and conceal themselves and camouflage themselves that is something that we can't even conceive of. So for somebody that has that high of a level of ability to conceal and hide themselves to just be like, whoops, that doesn't ring true to me.
I mean, I don't know. There's accidents. There's malfunctions. Who knows?
They got you. They fucking got you, Dave. Big alien. You're in their pocket.
I don't know. I'm not saying I do believe it. I'm just saying I don't know. And I am saying...
I do believe in aliens.
Look, all I'm saying is I want to believe, but that most of the time is kind of sounds like some bullshit.
Well, yeah. So yeah, I mean, let's just put aside the idea that they're telling the truth, which they could be. But what you said, I think, makes sense about if they're not telling the truth, if they're lying. That makes sense to me. That you're 85 years old and you're just kind of like, I never really did anything with my life. I kind of went nowhere. At least I can say I did this thing, and that can, it's like a cheat code to like immediately maybe becoming a lot more relevant as a person before I die.
Let's watch this little local news clip and then continue that conversation, because I think that there's something. I'd be curious about what your perspective is on this as a former local. Oh, is this the one at the bottom that says local news? Is that
local news?
Good afternoon. A photo has surfaced that a lot of people are claiming is proof that the Roswell UFO incident was real. It's a picture of an alien-type creature, and they claim it was taken in 1947 in Roswell. Who better check it out than our Roswell reporter, Cheyenne Cope. She hit the UFO museum to see what people there think. Cheyenne.
Well, Kim, the picture definitely has people talking at the UFO museum.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the last time I ever went to that, I went with my wife and our dog, Jack, who's passed away now. But you're allowed to take dogs into the UFO museum because New Mexico is a very dog-friendly state. They're like really big on dogs, so you can just like take dogs anywhere. And we went into the UFO museum with Jack, and he freaked out at those guys and was barking at them.
Aliens. and people come from all over the country to see them.
I'm a firm believer in aliens.
Well, this week, a never-before-seen picture was released that some people believe is more proof that a UFO did crash here back in 1947.
According to Kodak, yes, it is real. It hasn't been doctored. It hadn't been touched. It is from that time period, from the photographers that were in this area in 1947.
The photo was revealed at a conference in Mexico City on Tuesday. Someone claimed they found it in a box in an attic in Sedona, Arizona, along with pictures of Clark Gable, Bing Crosby, and Dwight Eisenhower.
That motherfucker in the background of the photo is wearing shorts.
It's definitely fueling the debate again over what's known as the Roswell UFO incident. Mark Briscoe is the executive director of the UFO Museum. He says he can't say for sure if the slide is real, but that if it is, it could be a big deal.
I guess, okay, it'd be a game changer.
Why did they just show footage of Gort from the day the Earth stood still?
So what did people visiting the museum today think?
I'm skeptical.
Of course, it's a lot more fun to believe it could have been aliens. So no, I can't say I believe one way or the other, but I'm definitely open-minded about it.
I think it would be really silly not to believe that there's something out there other than us.
Man, they went into the museum on the wrong day. They got no fucking true believers. They just got a bunch of wishy-washy, middle-of-the-road people.
What do you think? You think that photo is a real alien?
No, it just... it's funny. I think this is the third episode we've done where the people said that the photo was real because Kodak looked at it and said it was real. And it's like, what? Who's at Kodak? Who's working at Kodak? That's like, yeah, it's all real. This is a real picture of an alien.
It's in color. It's a small egg-headed alien-looking motherfucker, and it's in a glass case, and you can see the reflection of someone's leg behind it, and the person is blatantly wearing 1990s board shorts.
Yeah. And it just doesn't, the idea behind the validation that it's real is this was a photo that was taken at this time period, and it's not been photoshopped or doctored or whatever. The thing that the photo is showing is what the camera captured in that moment. That doesn't mean that the little alien dummy thing is fucking real. It doesn't look real. It just looks like any little alien dummy thing that you've seen a million times in any of these conspiracy theories. It looks like that little alien fake thing that recently, the alien from Mexico that they showed off the body of. It just looks like that.
Nah, I don't buy it at all. Spandrew, what do you think? What are your closing thoughts on Roswell?
Yeah, I want to believe, but it sounds like some bullshit. I ultimately, my thoughts on aliens are more scientifically transitive. The assumption that there's this whole expanding infinite universe, and that we're somehow the only intelligent life that exists anywhere just seems impossible to me. If the universe is infinite, then by definition, there's an infinite possibilities. So I feel like it would just be insane to not assume that there were other living beings somewhere. So that's the first layer, which is I believe that aliens exist because I just feel like it's impossible that they don't. The second layer, do I think that they've ever been to Earth? I don't know. There's a lot of weird shit. A lot of it can be chalked up to conspiracy theories. A lot of it can be chalked up to hoaxes. A lot of it can be chalked up to coincidence, but I still don't really know. There could be aliens that have visited our planet. I think, as a lot of people say, it's more likely that it's not aliens from another planet, but rather beings from another dimension that are from Earth, but from a different dimension. That's the thing that a lot of people believe is more likely. That rather than somebody developing the space, the capabilities of traveling that great of distance through space to reach our planet from distant galaxies, that rather it would be more realistic that somebody would be able to figure out a technology to shift into another dimension and visit from another version of Earth. I think that that's totally possible. I think visitors from another planet could also be possible. Whether or not I think that the UFO crash in Roswell was real and actually was aliens, I don't really believe it was. Just based on everything that I've seen, all the quote unquote evidence, it seems to me like it was just something the government was doing. I don't know what that was, if it was the Operation Mogul or if it was just something else. But it was something that they were doing, and they lied about it, and they completely, shredded public trust in them with all the various lies that they made. So there's no way of possibly believing anything they say at this point. So it's impossible to really get a good idea of like what actually happened. But I don't think that it was aliens.
I think I can sum up my thoughts with, I want to believe, but that's just some bullshit. I'm Dave Baker.
And I'm Spandrew Spice.
This has been Deep Cuts. If you'd like to find me on the internet, you do so at heyfaithbaker.com. If you want to find my buzz, you do so as Mary Tower More High. And Spanish on the internet.
I like how that's something we both have done, where if you fuck it up at the beginning, you just lean into it, and then you just like do the whole thing in gibberish. Well, thank you, Dave Baker, for your rousing plug of yourself. If you want to find me on social media, you can't, because I don't use social media. I don't do that joke anymore. If you want to pay respects to the dear beloved Papa Pricey, you can visit his website, dapricerights.com, and get his book, Deadbolt AI Private Eye, a book about a robotic detective that solves crimes in the future. You can follow me on social media by going to @DeadBoyDetective on TikTok, where I make cool videos. Recently I made a video where so I created a spreadsheet that tracks all of my music listening data. It pulls the data in from Spotify automatically through their API, and then it creates a bunch of different categorizations of that, where it shows my top 5 best most listened to artists of the week, my top 5 most listened to albums, and my top 10 songs. And then it also reminds me of artists that I haven't listened to in 30 days or more. And then it generates music recommendations for me based on my listening habits. And then it takes all that information and it sends me an automated email every week on Monday morning. I made a video about this and it went massively viral. It's got 3 million views of people watching me talk about the spreadsheet that I made. And I've weirdly gotten like this fan base of like women who find spreadsheets sexy, that are sending me DMs that I don't quite know how to handle. But if you want to check it out, it's on there at @DeadBoyDetective on TikTok. If you want to follow us on social media, you can go to Facebook and search Deep Cuts Podcast. You can search the Deep Cuts Podcast Facebook group where we talk about the show and make memes. You can go to our Discord server, bit.ly.com/DeepCutsDiscord, where we talk about the show, make memes, play games, and other stuff. You can follow us on Instagram at DeepCutsPod. You can follow us on TikTok at Mystery Treehouse. And you can follow us to Roswell, New Mexico, where Dave and I will be taking a pilgrimage so I can show him my old stomping grounds. Take him to the UFO museum, and then also to the Walmart at the mall. Deep Cuts is a production by Boy Genius Media. If you'd like to find this show and others like it, please visit boygeniusmedia.com or deepcutspod.com.
If you want to join in on post-episode discussions, please join the Deep Cuts Podcast Facebook group. Finally, subscribe to our YouTube channel for additional video content.